Hey guys, I hope everyone is doing great. So, welcome to today's session. For those who are joining us for the first time, thank you for joining us for this virtual session. We're going to be learning about the basics of Genkit and think of this as more of a foundation for you as you embark on learning on how can you be able to build AI-powered solutions, whether in your mobile application, web application, so on and so forth. So thank you for joining us. So as a heads up, this recording will be available to you right after this session. So don't fret, because that will be sorted out for you, and you should be able to access this right after. All right. Just gonna kick it off, and then I think the rest will just join us as we go ahead. So I think today you've come in with that mentality of you're going to be learning something new. And yes, for those who are new into the AI space or the AI enthusiasts, there's going to be an opportunity for you to learn what exactly is this Genkit, or maybe this you're hearing this for the first time, or maybe you've heard it somewhere. It's going to be an opportunity for you to also get to understand some of the applications of Genkit. So we're going to be talking about Genkit. In terms of our agenda, it's going to be covering Genkit, which in this case is an open source framework used to build, deploy, and monitor AI-powered applications. And then also we are going to be going into the core building blocks, which is prompts, which we usually define them as reusable structured templates for all your AI model requests, and flows in Genkit, which are basically functions that orchestrate your AI calls with the business logic. And then also when it comes to plugins, what exactly these are is easy integrations for models. So think Gemini, OpenAI, Llama, databases, and more. So what exactly is this Genkit that you've been hearing about? So in a nutshell, Genkit is an open source framework by Google that are used for building AI solutions. So what exactly does this mean by a framework? I think I'm going to liken this to how when you go into someone else's home, the home usually has a certain number of rules and regulations on how, for example, you as a guest to carry yourself, and all that. Basically, it has a structure and a standard way of acting when you go into that person's house. So in this case, our framework here is more or less a blueprint of rules, tools, and best practices that provides you or gives you a standardized structure for efficiently building something complex. So think of it um, as you as the developer, you are being, um, I'd say, unburdened in terms of you don't have to really understand, or you don't really need to look at the nitty gritty details of how things work. It's more or less like plug and play, like things are already set up for you. The only thing you just need to understand is, in this case with Genkit, is how do you use an LLM of your choice, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Gemini. How do you import these libraries for the different models, and how do you even write prompts, for example. So it has a standard way of doing things. So that is basically what we mean by an open source framework by Google for building AI solutions. And in this previous slide, we mentioned that it's used for building, deploying, and monitoring AI-powered applications. So that's just pretty much it in a nutshell. So this is a visual representation of how Genkit looks like. So Genkit as an SDK sits at the middle of your application and LLMs. Think of them as, I don't want to say it's an API endpoint because I think it's the most used analogy people understand. But just think of this as the middle person between your application and LLMs. So your applications, for example, let's say you've enabled a feature whereby um, the user what can they want to, for example, ask for a recipe based on ingredients that they have, right? And you're asking that through AI, right? And in this case, your AI sits inside Genkit, and Genkit more or less orchestrates or provides that structure between your application speaking to the LLMs. So regardless of the LLM, In this case, when it comes to Genkit, your code remains consistent. So you don't really need to think about how can I write, for example, Genkit code from scratch, and all that, because it already has a blueprint of how you're able to do that. And the only thing you need to know or need to understand is, just check out the documentation, for example, or in this case, attend such kind of boot camps whereby it allows you to understand how it works. And then from there, you can be able to now build your own AI-powered applications or AI-powered solutions. So this is how it basically looks like. This is the syntax of Genkit. So currently it's being supported by only three languages or three programming languages, that is JavaScript, Go, and Python. JavaScript and Go are more or less, I'd say they are a bit stable, but when it comes to Python is currently in experimental phase. So that one is not really recommended to ship it to production. So it's very, very important to understand like how can you write it in JavaScript and how can you write it in Go. And of course, if you want to give it a try in Python, you might as well as do that, just that don't ship it to production. So in this case here, this is just a very basic syntax of how Genkit looks like. So in the first two lines, you can see that we are importing Genkit from the Genkit library. And the next one is we are importing Google AI from the Genkit AI Google Gen AI library as well. And then in the third line, we are initializing Genkit using a plugin. And in this case, when we mentioned when it comes to plugins is plugins are integrations for these models. So in this case, we are integrating it with the Google AI model or Gemini model in this case. And then after that is now you prompting the AI to give you what you want. So in this case, we're saying that based on the text, for example, the text basically is going to be what is going to be returned from the AI, where we're doing the AI.generate, and then we're passing in the model that we want. So in this case, we want the Gemini 2.5 Flash. So it could be any model that you want, whether it's 2.5 Flash, 2.5 Pro, so on and so forth. And then for the prompt, is now basically simple English asking the AI to do something for you. So think of it as you're speaking to an AI agent, and with an AI agent, you need to give it a particular prompt so that it can be able to know what exactly does the user need and how should I be able to return it. So in this case, you can see it is returning it as a text. So that is just how it looks like in a nutshell. So what are these core features of Genkit, and what does this mean for you as a developer? So some of the core features are flows, prompts, plugins, tools, retrieval, augmented generation, Genkit developer UI, built-in observability, and traceability. So we're going to tackle these one after the other. So so when it comes to just give me a minute. Okay, no problem. So when it comes to flows, so first of all, when you look at the Genkit developer tools, it's more or less a command line interface for command line operations. So think of it as if you want to interact with, I'm going to give an example of if you work with Angular, you usually work with Angular CLI. So for certain commands like Genkit start or Genkit dev, that is what you could these are some of the developer tools that are available for you when working with Genkit. And then also, apart from that, we also have an optional local web app, which is called the developer UI, that interfaces the Genkit config for interactive testing and development. So think of this as I'm not going to start a war here on whether going the command way or the GUI way, but think of it as the CLI is you have yes, you have the CLI whereby if you know those commands, you can definitely type them in. But if you want to make use of the GUI or the graphical user interface, you have the local web app here, in this case, the developer UI, whereby you're able to see what flows you have deployed based on Genkit configuration. You can test it, and also at the same time also look at some of the responses or some of the actions that are being performed by the AI actions. So what exactly is a plugin or a Genkit plugin? So Genkit's capabilities in this case are designed to be extended by what we call plugins. And providers, and these are basically providers for large language models, retrievers, indexers, etc. That's just a lot of technical jargon. But basically, this means it allows you, as you can see over here, you have this line whereby you are initializing the AI and you're giving it a particular plugin. So I'd like to say is think of this as okay, in English sense, it's like something that you can just plug so that you can be able to make use of its resources. So in this case, we are plugging in the Google AI model so that you can be able to make use of Gemini, but also you can just swap it for other LLMs, whether it's OpenAI, Llama, so on and so forth. But in this case, we're going to be focusing more or less on Gemini. And then right after you provided the model that you want, whether it's Gemini 2 Flash, whether it's Gemini 2.5 Pro, it depends on what you're interested in. And then, so this is where exactly where your plugins sit. So your plugins sit right at the bottom, more or less. Or you can just say here, it looks at the top, but your application is the one that provides those prompts. For example, the user says, can you recommend me movies to watch that are comedy, right? Or can you recommend me anime movies, right? When you pass that particular prompt, what the Genkit does is it takes in that particular prompt and then sends it over to the LLM that has been prompted to do so. So as you can see in this particular example, when the prompt is passed by, then what the model does is it generates that particular response based on the prompt, whatever model it is. So I think you'll always hear this, that different models have different capabilities. So when you go 2.5 Pro, you might actually see that it's much more stronger than 2.5 Flash, but it dependent on what exactly your use cases are. So that is basically what a plugin is. So again, with the Gemkit, regardless of whatever large language model you use, your code remains consistent. So think of this as you have a power extension, right? And you have this power extension connected to a particular power source, right? This extension, you can move it from one socket to another. So that's how I'd liken the plugin to. So let's say you have an extension, you're going to plug it in the sitting room, you're going to be using it for sitting room purposes. If you want to use it in the bedroom, if you want to use it in the kitchen, that is basically what a plugin is. And some of the model providers, in this case, Gemini, how you usually make use of it is, of course, you first of all have to install some of the libraries, some of the packages for Genkit, and also Genkit AI, Google Gen AI. And then after you install them, you just import them and then make use of them. That is simply it. And again, regardless of the programming language, sorry, regardless of the LLM that you use, this code is more or less going to remain the same. Maybe the only difference will be the model that you want to call on and how it's going to be called in from the different library. For OpenAI or ChatGPT or GPT, as you can see over here, the first line remains the same. I'm gonna just go back again. The first line remains the same. The second line is different because it's speaking from OpenAI. And in this case, it's speaking from the OpenAI folder inside the Genkit AI library. And then, of course, the plugin, as you can see, the code remains the same. What you just need to do is call on the OpenAI model, and you should be able to, and you should be good to go. So how do you build with Genkit and Gemini? So first and foremost is configuring your model API key, right? And this means that you need to, first of all, in this case, as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on Gemini. You first of all get your Gemini API key from Google AI Studio. For those who don't know, don't worry about it. I'm going to just show you how to do that. And then after you're done getting that particular API key, of course, you copy it. And then you go to your command line, and then you just type in this particular command, export Gemini API key, and then you paste your API key. So this allows your whenever you're going to be running your Genkit code, it's going to be able to refer to this particular API key on without having you to clearly state what that API key in your code, because I think you've all heard this, that API keys are very, very sensitive. So it's very important to ensure that you preserve your API key in a secure location. So when you just put this inside your command line, it's going to be available to you only, and it's not going to be public. So with that, after you're done with configuring that API key for your model, you initialize the Genkit. As you can see over here in this code snippet, first of all, in the first line, you're just importing Google AI from Genkit AI, and also you're importing Genkit. And then after that, you're initializing the Genkit with the plugin. Again, remember, think of a plugin as a power extension, which you just plug it into whichever socket, whether it's the kitchen, whether it's the bedroom, whether it's the sitting room, because they all have different use cases. Or maybe you just prefer, let's say, the kitchen socket to the sitting room socket. So it's all about preference. So in this case, our plugin is Google AI. And then the model that we're going to use is Gemini 2.5 Flash. After you initialize your Genkit, you now go ahead and generate or build a function that is going to basically generate that command, called generate command. Basically, is based on whatever I've been given. So remember, you've initialized, think of this as configurations, right? You've configured it to have a plugin of Google AI and the model to be, yeah, okay. No worries, Silas. We'll be able to answer all the questions right after this. So when I'm done, then I should be able to answer your questions. Yeah, so think of this as your initialization. And when you're done with initialization, you can now make use of the AI instance to for example, like generate responses based on a particular prompt. So in this case, I'm just telling the AI to generate for me, like, help me create a meal plan for weight loss for 7 days. So in this case, it already knows that it needs to use Google AI, and it also it knows that also whatever model that we're going to be using is going to be the Gemini 2.5 Flash. So with that, we're going to get the data inside the response variable. And then, of course, if you want, you can console.log it. Or in this case, if you're building a web application or mobile application, you want to display it to the user. That is basically how you do it. So what exactly are flows? So a flow is a traceable function that orchestrates your entire AI-powered workflow, combining model calls with business logic into a single deployable API endpoint. I usually would liken flows to more or less like footprints, whereby you get to inspect what the AI has been doing and at what particular stage, for example, did it crash and what was the output. That is how I liken a flow to. So remember, again, a flow, you can liken it to footprints, whereby you can trace from where it started to where it's ending. So what does the flow do when it comes to orchestrating AI workflows? It basically performs steps before engaging the large language models. So for example, when it comes to authentication, authorization, retrieval, augmented generation. So this is just basically preparing, right? Preparing maybe, let's say, information before they go onto the LLM. Think of it this way, as, let's say you've deployed a particular function of, let's say your Genkit, you've deployed it on Firebase, and you want, when before a user is able to, let's say, get recommendation of movies, they first of all have to be authenticated, or they have to be authorized before they move on to, for example, getting those recommendations that they need. So it orchestrates these AI workflows, and as an example, as you mentioned here, is performing those steps before they engage those large language models. And then it also has a structure and is type safe. So every flow defines a clear input and output schema using Zod. Again, maybe it's a little bit technical jargon, but what this basically means is that it has a particular blueprint, right? And think of this as, let's say someone is building a house, right? and you want to have like a blueprint of how that should look like. And of course, you will engage whether it's an architect who's going to give you like a blueprint, and all that. So basically, these clear input and output schemas, or schemas in this case, are basically how the data should look like, or how the inputs and outputs should look like, whether it should be a string, should it be a number, should it be a float, so on and so forth. That is basically what it means here by structured and type safe. And then, of course, another thing is it's also going to be, it also has like deployment as APIs, whereby when you are deploying your flows, you are going to be deploying them as HTTP endpoints. And I'm gonna give an example of an application whereby you have your Genkit hosted maybe in your backend. For you to be able to make use of Genkit, you need to call on that particular endpoint so that you can be able to generate whatever the user wants. So these flows are usually deployed as HTTP endpoints, and what you just need to do on your end in the front-end code is just call on those particular endpoints, whichever format it is. So for example, if you're using Firebase functions, you use what we call the HTTP callable function, and then you call on those particular endpoints, and then you should be able to have that interaction between the user or the UI and the backend. So this is just basically how it works when it comes to APIs. And then I think this is one of my favorite. It's very traceable, and when it comes to debugging, it's very, very easy. Because I think I found like really, really good insights when it comes to debugging my flows. So for example, I was building like this particular application, which I'm going to show you guys, that allowed a user to search for movies, for example, be given recommendation based on what they like, and then also ask for recommendation based on a particular mood, right? And so I had different flows for different functionalities. I had a flow for generating those recommendations, had another flow for generating recommendation based on moods. And then with each and every one of them, I'm able to know where exactly the problem is. Because of that, I'm able to, for example, know is this particular flow working, or where the error is and what the output is. So with the beauty about it, it's with these flows, when it comes to when you enable it, it allows you to have this easy traceability for debugging, because again, you are able to monitor those flows that you've already deployed, and at the same time, remember the developer UI, you can also do that as well, just debugging locally without having to wait on the other end. So there's this video, this shows like how this looks like. This is a Genkit or function that has been deployed on Firebase. And in your Firebase project, you're going to have a particular tab called functions, or you're going to have a tab called Genkit. And if you've enabled traceability for easy debugging, you're able to see those particular flows that you have. So for example, this was this particular project was a GitHub Griller, or it was a project that is used to roast a user, right? So in this case, we had a GitHub Griller flow, which allows you to look at the number of requests made, the success rate, and even also the latency. And when you click on it, as you can see over here, well, currently it's not being seen here, but you are able to see those different use cases, or those different flaws that have been made, and also you're able to debug. For example, if it has failed, the beauty of it again is it is able to log every single step. If a particular command or a particular action has failed, it's able to log it. So it's easier for you to go into it, check on the error message, and also work on any corrections that are to be made. And then, of course, another characteristics of these flows is deployable as API endpoints, as we mentioned. And in this case, you can deploy them as Firebase functions or even Express.js. And then, so this is an example of a flow, how it looks like. So in this case, we're defining a flow called the social post generator flow, and we are defining the flow. Again, this is a syntax for Genkit, so you don't need to cram these things. So you can always find this in the documentation and also the resources that we're going to share with you. So inside this define flow, you give it a name. In this case, we've given the name social post generator flow. Then input schema, again, remember the schema is a blueprint of how your data should look like. In this case, we're using Zod to allow us to do that. And we're saying that this input schema or this input that is going to be gotten from the UI or from the front end is going to be of a string. And description is basically what this means. So in this case, it means that it's a topic for social media post, and then the output uh, basically is will return an object, the post, and its character count. So how we're expecting this output is, again, is an object which has a variable name of post text or a key of post text, and the value should be of string, and then the character count is of type number. And then with that, the code to execute. So this is just basically it in more lengthy format. Don't worry, we're going to share these particular slides. We want to share these slides with you so that you can be able to just look into them and also get to understand. But if you throw your eyes on this async function over here, we're getting the topic. And the first line, step one, is called the AI model to generate the content based on the prompt. And in this case, the prompt is generate a short engaging social media post about the topic. So remember that the user has provided the topic, right? And then keep it under 200 characters. And then these configurations is, for example, if you want, you don't necessarily need to put in this particular property. If you want, you can still put it. If you want to have like very specific values for your configurations, feel free to do so. So 0.8 is just adding some bit of creativity. And then the post that is returned from the response. And then after that is, of course, you now getting the count or the character count of your particular post. And then, of course, after that, you just return whatever you want to return. In this case, returning the final structured object. This is just basically how you'd write any functions, just that it has a particular syntax. But for JavaScript developers or Go developers or Python as well, this will also look a bit familiar, which you've also done a bit of programming. But don't worry about it. If you don't have any idea what this is, again, we'll be sharing resources for you to be able to at least get yourself up to speed. So what are these prompts and user inputs? So one of the thing is when it comes to Genkit, it gives you two powerful ways to manage your prompts. One, you can choose the best approach for your workflow, of course, and you can either define them declaratively in maybe, let's say, a prompt file, or you can just write them inside your code for dynamic, tightly coupled logic. This basically means is if you want a separate file to write your prompts, you can do so. Or if you want, you can still add them in your code. If you have them in a file, of course, you need to import them so that you can be able to make use of them. So this is an example of a prompt that is defined inside the file. So in this case, we're saying that the model we want to use is Google AI, and then the input, we're giving a particular schema, and then how we want it to come out in terms of output that is there. And then the prompt in this case is generate a simple recipe for a dish that features whatever input that the user provides as the main ingredient. So if you want to do it programmatically, that is you defining it inside the code, this is how you do it. Again, you define the prompt, or in this case, we have the recipe prompt, and then you give it a name, the model, the input schema, the messages, the role, the content, so on and so forth. But if you want to do it declaratively, whereby you have it in a particular file, in a particular file. In this case, as we mentioned over here, you can define them declaratively in simple prompt file. You can import the file. Of course, you import the temp function, which is what we mentioned earlier, and then you import that particular file, and then you just run it inside your async function. In this case, your generate function, and then with that, still get your response. You can either console.log it or return it for your. You can return it to your users in the UI. Right. I've mumbled quite a lot before I go into the demo. So what exactly should you be looking forward to in the next session? I think one of the key things to look out for is a chat session, and we're going to be learning about chat sessions and context propagation. And I think this is something you'll always be hearing when it comes to AI. Is context is very, very important, because for your AI to be quote unquote smart or think and act, it needs proper context for it to be able to, have follow-up questions or follow-up answers, and all that. And then of course you're going to dive deep into Genkit development UI, and then also do a little bit of RAG and function tool calling. Before I go into the demo, I think I have some few questions in the chat. Okay, so many note takers over here, but no problem. I think we have Silas. Silas here says, asks, since this plug is a pattern array, does it mean I can, I presume you're asking if you can have several plugins. I would say it's recommended that you have one at least, so that at least you get, I think, fine responses, because if you mix them up, you can have a little bit of an issue. But I've seen cases whereby people have different flows, whereby, for example, the first flow, let's say they use one LLM, and then whatever output they get from that LLM, they feed it into another flow that uses a different LLM, and then maybe it makes it even finer. That I've seen those, but having them all in one, I don't think it's actually recommended. I hope I've answered your question. Then Cyprian is asking, are these codes part of a larger project or just snippets? So these are currently snippets, but don't worry, we do have quite a number of code labs for you to be able to get your feet wet in terms of how to work with the Gen AI, and also how to work with Genkit. And in weeks to come, you're definitely going to even go deeper into it. So what we will have for you right now in terms of code labs are very basic, getting you to understand how this works. And of course, here you can give it a try with Go, or you can give it with Node.js with JavaScript. But basically, it's just very basic to get you up to speed. Yeah, Tony is asking. So we define the model to use both in Jenkins and the flow as well. So the model, what you just need to do is you just need to what's the word? You just need to define it once. I'm just gonna go back again. Just going to define it once. In this case, here in the plugin, right? And then in the model, you have whatever model you have, and then now when it goes into the function, you don't need to define it once again, but you just need to. In the instantiation is the one that you're going to define it. So in this case, Google AI. I'm going to give an example: Google AI or OpenAI. And then when it comes to running that particular function, it's going to run based on whatever key ingredients or key configurations would have provided in the instantiation. So you don't have to define it twice, just once in the instance or in the initialization. And then when it comes to generate, it's just going to base it on whatever you already have from there before. Okay. All right, just wanted to show you guys a quick demo. Just give me a minute. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Does anyone have any other question maybe before I go into the demo part? Okay, no question. All right. So I'm gonna demo a project that I built myself. It's a very simple movie library. I think for you guys have can work on such projects. You've worked on such projects for portfolios. Basically, I'm able to see movies. I'm able to see TV shows. I'm able to see my favorites, and yeah, basically, I can also look at top-rated movies, what is currently playing in theaters, and any upcoming movies. Um, yeah, basically that's pretty much it. Like it's a very basic, movie library and series library, right? But then I think the question usually comes in is how can you make your projects even better, right? And in this case, you'll have scenarios whereby people are interested in, yeah, like this is a very basic movie app, but what spice can you add onto it, right? And for me, in this case, I was like, what if I build my own a recommendation engine, right? And this recommendation engine is going to be providing me the recommendation based on what I like. So if you look at the favorites tab, I've favorited a couple of movies and TV shows. I've favorited The Simpsons, the movie F1 movie, Pirates of the Caribbean, um, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Shang-Chi, Spider-Man, this basic stuff, right, to favorite. Now, when I click on the For You, what happens is, in this case, Genkit is the one that is running these AI actions in the background. In this case, I've deployed them on my Firebase function as Firebase functions. And what it does is it gets I have a prompt that tells it pick all these users' favorites because they are based on a particular user's favorite content, and then with that you should be able to feed the AI with that together with a context. And in this case, I have a context of I have this huge library or database of a database of movies and TV shows. So what the AI does, it thinks and acts in the sense that it picks my favorites and then also looks at what is in the database and then tries to match what this user might like based on things like genre, the type of movies they like. Is it cartoon? Is it live action film? So on and so forth. So in this case, it's given me one recommendation. It says the user enjoys superhero movies, particularly those with a darker tone like Zack Snyder's Justice League, and also highly rated action films. The Dark Knight is a critically acclaimed superhero movie with a high TMDB rating and mature action-packed narrative that should appeal to this preference. So all these coming in from Gemini. I can refresh, of course, to see again if it can give me more recommendations. So I'm gonna wait a little bit, and I'm gonna show you how that looks like on my Firebase. Okay, so it fails. So sometimes the AI LLMs usually fail because sometimes it either people are using it so it hits limits, but you can always try again. And there we go. So it's given me Avatar, Aken, Avenger, and Guardians of the Galaxy. So if we go to my Genkits, right, and I want to see what has been happening, so I can just refresh. We'll see. Okay, currently it seems like it's taking a bit of time. But let's check on. Okay, it really takes like a second or two to propagate, so we're gonna come back to it. And then I have what you call smart recommendations, right? Now, for smart recommendations, basically it's a way of me just telling the AI that I'm in the mood to watch cartoons. Can you recommend me some? So I can just say, I am in the mood to watch sci-fi movies that are action-packed and have some comedy. It's just comedy. Thrown into it. Okay. kindly recommend me some good ones. All right. So I'm gonna click on that, get recommendations, and let's see if Genkit has registered on our Firebase. Okay, still hasn't. No worries. Let's see what could be the problem. Yeah, okay, so I think it takes like a minute or two. All right. So as you can see over here, it says you're looking for sci-fi action packed. Oh, something happened. Yeah, sometimes it has this habit. But anyway, okay. Yeah, it failed. But now, as you can see, I'm trying to see if we can get our data, but it seems not working, but not a problem. We're gonna get back to it. And then also we have just give me a minute. We also have what we call the guess the movie. So guess the movie basically is you feed the AI a particular image and you ask it like guess this particular movie. That is the prompt basically based on the image that we provided. So I'm gonna give it a particular image. Just give me a minute. So this is a movie called Guardians, if I'm not wrong. So it's a animated film from I think a couple of years ago. So we're gonna ask the AI to identify it. Okay, so it takes a little bit of time. There we go. It says that the movie is Legend of the Guardians, The Odds of Gahul. And always you have to give people that caveat of this is an AI guesstimate, not a definitive answer. Please verify the results yourself. So these are some of the capabilities that you can make use of when it comes to AI for any application, right? Think of any boring application that you've come across, and you'd actually find that there's quite a number of use cases to even make it more exciting for someone to make use of that particular app. So I'm going to share this link with you guys to just check it out during your free time as well, whenever you get time. So let us see if our Genkit has registered anything. There we go. Here it is. So you can see over here, I have a flow called the get recommendations flow. So if I click on that get recommendations flow, it will tell me that I have either successful or failed paths, right? So we can go into let's start with the failed paths, right? And we can see where the problem was. So this is another thing when it comes to AI. You also need to understand how to tweak it based on different use cases, right? So in this case, I had a failed in one in the generate command, and if you look at why it did that, let's just find why. Okay, so what you usually do is whenever you look at a flow, in this case, I have a get recommendations flow, and then this is how Genkit orchestrates this flow for you. It starts from what initiated it and what constitutes to that particular flow. So in this case, what constitutes the get recommendations flow is the generate and then Gemini AI, right? And under generate, we have the Gemini AI being able to produce the information that you need. And also at the same time, it uses my database of movies. In this case, I'm using a publicly available API called TMDB API, or I think it's the movie database API. It's free. You can be able to check it out. It uses it as what you call a tool. I think this is something you're going to learn more next week. And what basically it means is think of this as its own Google search, right? Because when you ask the AI, I want you to give me movies that are sci-fi based, or I want you to give me, I'm in the mood to watch comedy series, right? You can either have the AI, go out onto the internet and do it for you, or you can give it very specific context. So in this case, I'm giving it a very specific database because, again, remember that when you're building AI or AI agents, you want to ensure that they are they do something specific and they do it very well. And I think you'll always hear about specialization of AI agents, is that you want it to be an AI agent that is very specific for a very specific thing. So in this case, I want it to be an AI agent that is going to be very good in movie recommendations, and as well as also giving you movies based on a particular mode that you're in. So in this case, I've given it its own Google search, quote unquote, which is a get MDB data. It returns that particular information. Yes, sometimes I get the error. I usually go all the way down, and it can tell me that, as you can see over here, as I mentioned, sometimes the model is usually overloaded because people are using the same model somewhere else. So here this tells me that the model is overloaded. Please try again later. But if I go back to my recommendations flow, I also still have what you call happy paths. So happy paths are basically successful paths. So if I click on one of them and I see, no, let's go back. Can pick one of them. Here we go. This was the recommendation based on a particular mood. So, so another thing is based on what you give it in terms of your inside your code, it's going to always put that into consideration. So in this case, these recommendations are going to be very specific to me because in my prompt I've instructed it to always take into consideration the user's favorite information, and those favorite information are tied to a particular user's ID, for example. So that is why you have the user ID and a particular count of how many recommendations should I give them. So so as you can see over here, the prompt was, you're a highly intelligent movie and TV show recommendation assistant. The user has a list of favorite movies and TV shows. The user's favorites, all those favorites, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm saying, consider based on these favorites, recommend 5 additional movies or TV shows that the users might enjoy. Consider the genres, actors, directors, themes, and overall vibe. Prioritize items with high TMDB ratings. Avoid recommending any of the items already in the user's favorite list. So use the provided TMDB IDs to check. For each path, if available from a TMDB search, again, this is our our AI agent's Google search, you must use the tool to search for movies or TV shows and retrieve the details if you need more information about a potential recommendation or to confirm a recommendation. So again, during during these 8 weeks, you're also going to be taught about things to do, like how to do proper prompt engineering, because again, when it comes to writing prompts, you want to make sure that you give your AI agent proper context. I think you've all seen whereby if you asked AI to do something based on a particular prompt, and you think that it's going to be maybe you believe that it's going to be super intelligent, you find like, why is this so dumb, right? But sometimes it's because how you prompt it is basically how it's going to give you that particular data. Yes, it's going to try to be smart, but if you don't give it enough information to work with, then it might as well just give you what you call garbage, because I think you've all heard of garbage in, garbage out, or GIGO, right? Whereby whatever the AI ingests in terms of its training data, it's definitely going to provide you out there as a response. So this is just an example of a project that you can use to integrate AI features to it. Yeah, and in this case, it has been deployed as Firebase functions. So I have this all on my backend, so I don't need to have this in my front end, because again, sometimes you want your mobile application to be fast, and if you have all these functions behind in your front end, it might get quite challenging when it comes to things with internet and all that. I wanted to show you something else. I think it's the GitHub Griller. I'm not sure if Mina is here. I wanted to show them the GitHub Griller. Mina, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Oh, I think I found it.
Yeah, I go.
Okay.
Oh, hopefully it's online though.
Okay, let's
Late
browse
man.
up. So I'm
Wait,
going to.
are you sure you want to do this?
I'm very much scared because I know it's going to roast me proper.
All right,
Any
go
any
ahead.
takers?
Let's have
Can
some fun.
someone donate the name so that we can roast
Sacrifice
them?
themselves for the cause. Sacrifice yourself.
Can someone share the GitHub name so we can see if we can how roasted you will be? Just share it on the chat.
Just your username. We won't figure out who you are.
Yeah, okay. We have Sudo Warrior. Okay, let's try with Sudo Warrior first.
Then you want can figure out who you are. We can figure out who you are. we, we are not going to try.
Okay, let's see. Okay, the AI is preparing the roasts. Oh, okay. So what does it say? Pseudo warrior, or should I say pseudo pretender? Wow. Your your bio claims failure is not the end game, but just a detour with higher stakes. Ship it, test it in production, which is a great excuse for why all your projects have 0 stars. Wow. You've got the coding covers your name, but your GitHub looks more like a dusty old shade where coding dreams go to die. With an account created in 2025, you've clearly mastered time travel, but somehow still haven't mastered getting a single star on your repos. And those, wow. I don't want to continue because, yeah, this is very, very damning. Yeah. Maino, would you like to explain what happens behind the scenes?
In my own defense, I'm not doing any of that. Yeah, so hi everyone. So when can you share the repo?
Yes, sure.
Go to the repo, go to apps. I think it should be Genkit, and then show the series of tools. Most of this will be covered next week, but this is a good example of what we call tool calling.
Mhm.
And what this does is when you give it your username, it's going to we provide a series to fetch your username, your GitHub profile, your repositories, your commit messages, forks, and other stuff. So, and then the idea behind it is simple. It's going to figure out the information it needs to roast you based on the prompt. So if Wayne can go back to the repo after this and show them the prompt I have given it,
Okay.
in order to do that, I actually toned this down a little bit. Hold back. Everyone
Okay.
was in go to, yeah, you're in the right place actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Genkit, then go to source. And then, yeah, that's everything is in there. Then scroll down to the flow itself, define flow. Can you zoom that in? I don't think the gentleman can see.
Okay. Sorry about that.
So I think those are tools. I think the flow is the last thing.
Oh, okay.
The second, yeah, there you go. So this is the prompt I give it, and this is where prompt engineering comes in, whereby you have to be very specific. So first to give it a name, and then we tell it what it does, and then give it a criteria. And then, so as you can see, we are providing the GitHub username in there in quotes. The reason we're doing that in quotes is so that it knows everything within the quotes is the username. So if someone tried to escape that, might be able to hack it, but I'm not too concerned. It doesn't do anything important. And then scroll down a little bit. So as you can see, I've given it a list of criteria for what it's going to look at. So language statistics, start repository, commit-based roasts, and giving it like very consistent instructions on how it's going to think about what's it going to look for in order to formulate a roast. And then just below there, you can see we have tools. And we define this above. So we have a tool to fetch commits, repositories, GitHub user profile, and so on. And the reason that I'm giving this as tools is so that I can figure out, okay, I've been told to load this, so which tools do I use based on this? So if, for instance, we were to provide like, let's say, tools to access, let's say, your Spotify account based on the based on the prompt, it's going to ignore those. But in this case, it's going to fetch everything. And then we have the config section, which is also important. I have set the temperature very high so that it's creative. And this is open source and you can learn this locally. And if you do, can you try setting the temperature to something like 0.2 and see what happens? So the higher the temperature, the more creativity is compared to a lower temperature. And then we are streaming the response back to the customer. But in this case, we don't use the stream in any way. We just receive the text back and we display. So everything is hosted on Firebase. As you can see, we have an on-call Genkit, which just converts the flow into a Firebase function so that you're able to interact with it from an API endpoint using Firebase functions. But you can convert this to an Express server and so on. I might do a Go version at some point in the future, but I'll let you know when I do that.
Okay.
So does that run in parallel? No. It just decides how, whichever order it wants to do that, because we are not telling it what to do. We are just giving it access to an API that it doesn't have access to as tools, and then it decides in what sequence it's going to do that. So in this case, what we're doing is what we call agentic AI, whereby now you give it a series of tools to interact with the application, and then tell it, do this, and then it's going to figure out which tool I'm going to call first, which tool do I need, which tool I'm going to ignore based on that prompt so that it can achieve its own goal. So most of this will be covered next week when you're talking about drag and tool calling, among other things that I'm now going to help you get to a point where now you can build like a fully functional agent that is able to do things on behalf of the user based on the prompt you give it.
Thank you. Thank you, Maina. All right. Yeah, as I mentioned, we are going to share this with you, these slides. So I'd like to open the floor for any questions. Okay, Cyprian is asking, interesting, on the tools part, does the LLM run them in parallel or sequential? I think mine has answered.
I just answered that question.
Okay.
So it's all up to the LLM. We don't control how it uses the tools we give it. We just make sure the prompt is specific enough for it to use the tools it has in order to achieve a certain goal.
All right, thank you. Anyone else who has a question? If you want to ask a question, you can also raise your hand and then we can call you on stage and ask the question. I think I've shared this document on the chat for anyone who wants to check out the code labs. Please do take some time and go through the code labs because they are going to be super helpful in your understanding of what Genkit is all about, and at the same time, it's an opportunity for you to, get your hands dirty in terms of, actually working on projects. In this case, of course, it's just very basic projects, but it gives you that understanding of how to, understanding that syntax of Genkit, understanding how does it do, how do you, write, how do you choose a plugin, so on and so forth. So it's an opportunity for you to just get involved in building this stuff. Yeah. Anyone who has a question?
So when before they ask a question, I think I would like to mention they don't have to worry so much about accessing the slides. We've shared there is a link on Discord for the slides, which has got those code labs at the end. And we'd also like to encourage everyone to keep on checking the Google Drive that we shared, multiple resources and anything else that is useful for learning will be shared on that Google Drive. And also, I would like to mention another thing. I can see some of us are recording. There's no need for you to record your own sessions. All these sessions are recorded. The previous ones for Monday and Tuesday are recorded as well. And on Discord, we've already shared the Google Drive where you can find the recordings for the previous days. So no need to worry about having to record this on your own. The video, you'll have the video ready by tomorrow. It should be in the Google Drive and you can be able to rewatch it as soon as you have access to it. All right.
Thank you for that clarification as well, Alex. And I hope everyone has joined the Discord channel. If not, let me see if I can get the Discord link, because it's very important that we're all in the Discord channel, because that is where we usually share these resources and any other information that might be helpful in your learning. So if you're not on Discord, please do join the Discord server, because that is where all the magic is happening. Let me just get the link. In the meantime, I think anyone, if has any question, they can ask. Okay, I think there's a question here. I ran Genkit start with my Gemini API key export and Genkit end set as per the code, but the developer still shows waiting to connect to Genkit runtime, even though the logs show no errors. Where is in the UI connecting? Aina, would you like to take this?
So, yeah, let me see.
I think it's got to do with the Genkit environment, the API key environment.
Yeah, that's probably an issue with failed to compile. So that happens when there is an error. You need to check the logs if there is an error on that console window that does that. So if you could, or if you're in the Discord channel, can you share either a screenshot, or even you can actually invite me into that if it's, I suspect this is Firebase Studio if I'm not mistaken, which is usually a little bit hard to navigate. You can share that with me or invite me. Let me just put my email here, and then I'll be able to look at. But if you're in this channel, feel free to ask the question and tag me, and then we can look into it. Because
Yeah.
I think it's an issue with something is failing to compare, and that's why it's unable to connect.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So Tony, let's continue the conversation on Discord and then see how we can assist you in that. So, anyone else? The question or clarification they might need? Okay. I'll probably assume that everything is well. Right. Alex, Maina, anything you'd like to share with the attendees as well?
Yeah, someone is asking about a question in the chat, managing environment variables. I may not, so generally don't hard code them in your code. That's the trick. So we have a .env file which can do this automatically for you. So in this case, this is another option whereby you say export. In this case, you are just setting it as an environment variable called Gemini API key, and Genkit is going to, the plugin for Google AI, not Genkit itself, is going to be looking for this instead of hard coding this. If you wanted, you can hard code this, but not advisable. So you want to keep that key away from your source code, and that goes for all other secrets. Use environment variables, or something like, if it's something super sensitive, use something like a secrets management service. Like I think Google has a secret manager similar to AWS and other tools that will allow you to manage your secrets without exposing them.
Good, thank you, Maina. There's this term I've had called context engineering. Do you know more about it? If yes, how does it differ with prompt engineering? Okay, I can start by answering, and then my colleagues can also answer. I think context engineering in this case, it means, remember when I talked about giving your AI agent its own Google search? That is what could mean as context engineering. I've never heard about it, but I know about prompt engineering. But I think in this case, context engineering is giving your AI agent proper context, and that is giving it the tools, giving it the information that it needs, giving it the database that you want it to base its actions on. And then, of course, with prompt engineering is giving your AI agent very specific instructions on what to do, what not to do, and when to do it. Maybe Maina, Alex would like to add something on that.
Yeah. So generally, when you're talking about AI agents, let's say, for instance, the examples we have shown you, I don't know about the Nova one, but the Genkit one, it doesn't have like context or about previous requests because we don't store that information anywhere. We don't need it for this specific use case. But generally, think about the chat experience you get from either Gemini.com, is it Gemini.com? The web UI of the app or ChatGPT or whichever chat agent you're doing, and you ask it about, let's say, something that is very specific, like, honestly, I have no idea, but you can ask it about something like, please, or between React and Angular, which is better? And then it's going to give you a list of pros and cons for each library. And then you might have a follow-up question about, let's say, which one would you recommend about a specific thing? So this is where now you didn't ask it which one would you recommend about a specific thing between Angular and React. You just ask it a follow-up question, and now it needs the context of the previous conversation which you had. So this is where context engineering comes in, because now you need to be able to give it the context of that conversation so that you can have a follow-up conversation with it without losing track. And the problem with context is that the higher the more context you give it, the more token you're consuming. So that means you need to be very careful with how you do this. So some agents will get at some point, get and then compress your context in order to be able to fit in within the within the token window. And this is where context engineering is important, trying to figure out what information is important for the conversation to go on. And which is also why the reason why you recommended to always start a new session when you are doing something that's unrelated to the previous session instead of loading it onto the same conversation on and on. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Maina. Alex?
Yes, I think I can add on to what Maina is mentioning. If we give it, like for example, working as a developer or an engineer, when you're working, there is what we call context switching, in that you are working maybe on doing an API that is getting customer orders, and then somebody comes along and asks you a question about payments. Now here we are saying you are changing your context. So if we come to LLMs, to add on to what Maina was saying, as a human being, the LLM or the AI model, there is so much that it can be able to remember in, if we simplify it, there is only so much that it can be able to remember within a certain time span. Or it has, let's think of memory. There is so much that it can be able to retain in memory as you are continuing working. So there is a lot that goes into context engineering, because you have to manage how much info the LLM can handle. And remember, LLMs have finite resources. The resources accessible to them are not infinite. They have a finite memory, and all of this computing power, all these things are finite. So if you're able to manage the information that the LLM can be able to use, so that you can be able to continue on in your conversation as you're doing what you're doing, then you'll have gone a lot into context engineering. And also remember, the reason context engineering is coming up as an issue within AI dev work is another feature or another, let me call it by design, that AI models know a lot about macro issues, but they hardly know anything to do with micro issues. Using the example that Wayne was doing a demo, if we just went to Chat GPT and asked it to recommend a movie, it has no idea what kind of movies maybe you like. But if you have a database of the movies that you like and what you don't like, you can actually be able to tell it, recommend for me a movie, and it is grounded based on the data that you're able to provide, or the data that you're telling it, please, when you're doing a recommendation, restrict yourself to this. And then that is where now we come to what Maina was calling tool calling. We are able to enhance the knowledge so that it has an idea on very specific issues, or a very directed or specific now context or knowledge or information. So that will still be in the area of context engineering. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, and I think Alex touched on something very important when it comes to context and also tokenizations of the different LLMs. It's also important to understand that, as Alex has mentioned, that the different LLMs or different models, in this case, let's say models, the different models under any LLM. So in this case, if you're talking about Gemini, for example, you'll find like Gemini 2.5 Pro has, for example, a number of requests per day. It has like limits as well in terms of number of requests, and also at the same time in terms of tokens that you're going to be, sending out in terms of input and coming out as output. So that is something to always look into. So if you want to look into that, we have rent limits. Gemini, let me just share the link with you guys. Do take a look into it, and then you can feel free to check, feel free to see which model works for you and at what time. And of course, I think, as we mentioned, when it comes to the different models, they have different capabilities. You find like 2.5 Pro might be more, it's more powerful than 2.5 Flash, more powerful than 2.5 Flash Preview, but it depends on it. So when you look at what it means by TPM, so TPM here means tokens per minute. So I think they can get up to 250,000 tokens per minute, but then the requests per day or requests per minute is the one that can differ, and based on whichever model that you're working with. So that's why I think sometimes you find that when you're working with whichever LLM, you find that like, oh, you have reached your token limit. I mean, you've reached your request limit. Come back after 5 hours or after 24 hours or something like that. So that is something to also look into. Yes, my name wanted to add something before Edward.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yes, Edward.
Okay, I have a question on those models. Maybe I have decided to use Gemini 2.5 Pro.
Yes.
I exhaust my my tokens. Can I go to another model and start using it, or do I have same number of tokens for all the models?
Yeah. So if, for example, your requests are done for 2.5 Pro, you can definitely switch to 2.5 Flash. So if you remember, let me just share let me share the slides. If you remember where we defined that in our initialization, we do it over here. So you can just switch it from 2.5 Pro, 2.5 Flash to 2.5 Pro, or from 2.5 Pro to 2.5 Flash, if you find maybe one or the other has its tokens or requests depleted. Because I know 2.5 Pro is very, very powerful, but when it comes to the requests per day, it's quite little. Yeah, so as you can see over here, 2.5 Pro only has a maximum of 100. And if you're working with an application, or you have an app that has quite a lot of traffic, or maybe let's say a substantial amount of traffic, it can get depleted quite fast. But of course, these are for the free tiers. But if you want to go higher than that, there's that, and then of course it has its own pricings as well. Yeah, but yes, you can definitely switch between one model to another.
Yeah, and it should also be possible to switch dynamically as well.
Mhm. Any other question? Okay, if there are no questions, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for having the opportunity to join us for today's webinar or today's virtual session. Please feel free to check out the slides that we've shared with you, and as well as also check Discord for all those information that you might need with regards to the record labs and all that. And also you might find questions maybe that might be pertaining to what you're looking for. So follow those conversations as well on Discord. If you have any issue, if you have any question, feel free to reach out to us at hello@unstacked.dev. And also we're on Discord, so you can also feel free to also ping us over there. Yeah. Alex, Maina, any parting shots?
Not on my end. I'm good, and I would say if you have any questions, like Gwen said, ask on Discord. Feel free to reach out with anything you have, any challenges. We are sending out code drops today for you to do over the next week to familiarize yourself with concepts on Genkit before we cover the heavy stuff on next week. And feel free to ask any question if you're blocked at any point on Discord, and we'll be able to respond to those. And be sure to attend next week's sessions, and hopefully by the end of next week, we'll be able now to do like full agents that you can even deploy on GCP with the credits we're going to get you by then.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us, and see you in the next session. Have a good evening and a great week ahead. Thank you.